Let's see. Yep, I'm on. I may have to give me another podium. I think, will this one hold the Bible? Short notice, I didn't have time to write things out. I don't type, and I don't write fast. Either one of those, so I'm going to need two Bibles for whatever reasons. I'll explain it later, but get this all ready. Isn't it a beautiful evening, a beautiful day? It's turned out to be. It's been awesome. It's either Sheila or Ricky. I think it was Sheila Jemison I was talking about Bible. No, it was Ricky. It was at a staff meeting. I told her I was looking to buy another Bible. She says, "You buying another translation?" I said, "No. I'm buying the same." She said, "Well, why do you need another Bible like that?" And I said, "Well, I've got a regular King James and I have a Schofield Bible, and I'm wanting to get a Rye. I think it's R-Y-R-I-E or something like that, or R-Y-I-E Bible. It's all in the individual's translation, or how he's kind of like a commentary on the whole Bible. And I have a Henry O. Morrison, which Morrison is a creationist, which has gotten popular here lately. And but I like just keeping the King James, because if I don't, I get confused. When I go from one translation to the other, they seem to read different. So I keep the same. And that's why I have two of them here today, and it has to do with the references. This is where we're going to go to. And that's pretty much how I prepare. I'll pull the Bibles out. I usually have commentaries and stuff like that. Now I'll pull up a couple of translations, and I'll find out what this word means and what that word means and where this goes with it. And then I spend the painstaking time trying to write it down and then go from there. So I didn't have time to do all that. So I hope this comes out all right tonight. We're going to find out. But I'd like to open in prayer. And Chris told me this morning that he would mind to pray sometime. So Chris, I hate to put you on the spot, but would you open in prayer? I want to hit you right off the bat. You said you wouldn't mind praying. Would you mind praying for us?
Heavenly Father, thank you for the beautiful day that you've given us. Thank you for these wonderful people that we get to spend it with. Please bless Wade as he brings this message to us. Help us to open our ears and understand what is being said to us. We thank you for everything that you do for us. These things we ask in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you very much. Book of Ruth. We're going in the book of Ruth. Last time we talked about Rahab, and I'm not going to try to talk too much more about that. And but this time we're going to go ahead and dive into it. Let's get these closer so I don't have to look too far away. Okay. Book of Ruth. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his two sons. Now I'm going to stop as we go through this and try to explain a little bit about it. You've heard me say more than once, sometimes we just need to go fishing. Sometimes as Christians, we just need to go out and do things. As long as we do it within the will of God, that's okay. But we'll find out here in the book of Ruth that this man, Elimelech, I'll say it right here in a minute, he went to sojourn in the country of Moab. Now, he went a-fishing, but what I would say, he went a-fishing, but he went a-fishing in the wrong pond. And what I mean by that, he didn't go out where the Lord wanted him to go. There was a reason why there was a famine in the land. A lot of times there's a famine in the land. We'll talk about right here in Judges 2:17. No, where is that? Genesis 12:10. You'll turn to Genesis 12:10, but actually I'm going to look at the notes of what Schofield is saying when it says what it means by famine in the land. And I read this a while ago, and that didn't make any sense when it said 12:10, but he is referring to what it means. Hold on here a second. Genesis I'm the last one to find it, ain't it? That's not a good sign. And there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And what he's saying down here is the famine was often a disciplinary testing of God's people in the land. It talks about in Ruth and in Samuel and Psalms, the resort to Egypt is a typical of the tendency to substitute for lost spiritual power of the fleshly resources of the world, instead of seeking through confession and amendment the restoration of God's presence and favor. So in other words, the way I look at it, they went fishing in the wrong pond. They didn't need to be there. There's no reason to be there. They went for the worldly goods and the worldly things of saying, hey, there's something going on in Moab with the Moabites, so we're going to leave where we are now and go somewhere else. Now, Sally and I have gone to different churches, and I've had different jobs, but we've always felt like the Lord was leading us there, not knowing what we wanted to do there, what we needed to do there. We had really no idea a lot of times, but we felt led by God or urged by God to go there. But if you'll listen to this first part, it says, now it came to pass in the days of the judges' rule that there was a famine in the land. A certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And we'll find out later, this didn't turn out too well for him. It didn't turn out well at all for him. So he did not inquire of the Lord to find out on this. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion. And what that means is Mahlon was sick, and Chilion means pining. I'm not real sure what pining means, but I think it's something to do. They were not real healthy individuals. I know Pastor Jordan could probably tell me what that was, but my understanding of what that is, they were not real healthy individuals, because the first one meant sick. Ephraite of Bethlehem, Judah, and they came into the country of Moab and continued there. Now we're going to find out what happened to Elimelech. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. So he didn't go there too long, and he's passed away. And then we're going to find another thing that they did. They went fishing in the wrong pond. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Opar, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. Now in the Old Testament, I didn't get a chance to look it up exactly where it's at, but the Israelites were frowned upon by taking foreign wives for taking foreign wives. They wanted to try to keep it all within the Israelites. They frowned against us having that and doing that. And actually, with the Moabites, there was a law in there that if you married a Moabite so many years, their descendants couldn't even go into the house of the God. And if a man took a Moabite woman, the children were never allowed in the house of the God. For so many years or so many generations. And that went for whichever, if you was a Canaanite or whatever, it had something to do with it. But we will find out what was the deal with the Moabites. And the Moabites were actually, I think it was in this one, Genesis 1937. Let's see if I can beat you to this one this time. 11:30, I'm almost there. Who were the Moabites? And in 37, and the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. We're going to back that up to 33. It talks about Lot. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, which was Lot. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also. And go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bore a son, and called his name Moab. the same as the father of Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name, Benjamin, the same as the father of children of Ammon unto this day. Down here in a commentary where Schofield says, Abraham and Lot were contrasting characters of the same stock, subject to the same environment, and both justified men. The contrast in character and career is shown to be the result of their prospective choices at the crosses of their lives. Lot chose him, all the plain of Jordan, for a present advantage. Abraham looked for a city which had foundations, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron. The men remained types of the worldly and the spiritual believer. So you'll see that Lot, he actually fished in the wrong pond as well. He stayed next to Sodom and Gomorrah and became well-known, wealthy in that town. And if you remember the story, angels come to Abraham and was going to destroy it, and they did destroy it. They got Lot out, and his wife turned around and looked, and she turned a pillar of salt. And that's the reason why his daughters took on the sins of the city, and that was something that they did. It's not a thing that God ordained or God allowed, but it allowed through his providence that came about. And you'll just see in the story, God still blessed Lot. He was still part of that. And the Moabites, when they come out of the Exodus, when Moses led them out, God told them not to bother with Esau, the Edomites, because that was Jacob's older brother. Pastor Paul talked on that a little bit today. But in the Old Testament, when they came out, God said, do not fight against Esau, the Edomites, and do not fight against Moabites, because they were Lot's descendants. But then you'll find out in the story that the Moabite king hired Balaam to prophesied against the Israelites, and then that turned on them and did not turn out well. But at first God said, do not destroy the Moabites. But they, because of their own doing, brought on their own judgment upon themselves. Where were we? Verse 3. No. Verse 4. They took them wives of the woman of Moab. The name of the one was Opar, and the name of the other Ruth. And we read that. And they dwelt there about 10 years. They were there a long time. She was there without her husband. And now their children, her two sons, took on wives of their own. We do not know the names of them. We don't know, we don't know the age of them. We don't know if they took them when they were young, when they took them when they were older. All we know is they had taken wives. You kind of find out they had no children as well. We'll read on. And Malam and Chilion died, also both of them, and the woman was left of her two sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughter-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard, listen to this, in the country of Moab, how the Lord had visited his people and given them bread. This is where I got jumped to the other side. The name Bethlehem means bread, which is interesting in the book of Ruth. How the Lord had visited his people and given them bread. Visiting people, the Lord has restored them. We just read in the Schofield Bible, he talked about sometimes famine is a way of restoring the people. They want a time of people of repentance and restoration towards the Lord. And for some reason, we don't know why, maybe he had restored them or he just went ahead and blessed them anyway. But in giving them bread, and in giving them bread, we'll find that in Psalms 132:15. That's really a little bit on that. I'm sorry we're jumping around. I normally try to prepare all this so you don't have to do it, but I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I'll read on there. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There will be a horn of David to bud, and I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. So he's restoring him once again. Wherefore she went forth out of that place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-laws with her. And they went on their way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. I thought that was interesting. I didn't search that out, but return to your mother's house, not to your father's house. Return to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as he hath dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hopes, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? And in the Old Testament here, the reason why they're doing that is, in order for them to remarry, they need it's not a redeemer, a kinship redeemer. That's what Boaz did. But if she was to raise up sons, then the sons would be married to Oprah and Ruth, and they would get their seed through there. Kind of odd for nowadays. They just would have went and remarried. But back then, that was not the custom, and that was not how they did that. So that's what Naomi's trying to explain to them. If I was to remarry today, are you willing to wait 12, 13, 14, 15 years, however long it is, for me to have another child? And she's saying she's even past age to do that. So there's no hope. There's no hope whatsoever in them returning with her. Their decision to leave Bethlehem and to go into the country of Moab has cost her husband and her 2 sons, and also whatever that she had. She had nothing to give, nothing to pass on for her generation. Her generation was just going to die, basically. There was no inheritance left. And would you tarry, let me read that again. Would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. She has acknowledged what she has done. Or she at least acknowledges that the Lord her God is not with some of the decisions that she has made. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Oprah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth claved unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back into her people, and into her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. This is interesting here. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. What we're not seeing in these scriptures, and what we might overlook on this, even though Naomi and her husband chose to leave the comfort of the Lord and go to another city, what we're not seeing in here is her testimony. With the fact that her 2 daughter-in-laws didn't want to leave. And you could say, well, emotional, whatever, but Ruth herself wanted to stay. Not just wanted to stay, but she's willing to never have kids, never remarry, whatever. She wants to be there because what? Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. So Naomi's not that bad of a person, what we would think and the decisions she's made. To me, a lot of times when we put it in today's perspective, it's kind of like what a lot of us do. There's a lot of times we make decisions, it's not good decisions. That does not ruin our testimony. That does not ruin our walk with the Lord. Actually, sometimes through that, we share our testimony with others, and they come to know the Lord as their Savior. And as this instance, you'll see in there, it doesn't say that in here, and I'm reading that into that, but I think it's very safe to say that because of Ruth's statement. If Naomi, she did not respect Naomi, and if she didn't have a high regard for Naomi, and if she didn't have a high regard for God, and that's like when last time I spoke, we talked about Rahab. If Rahab had not had a high regard for the Israelites and a high regard for their God, she wouldn't have done what she did. And that's the same way you see with Ruth. The Lord is working in her life, but she has brought Naomi into her life to share, even though Naomi has done things that were not the right thing to do, like we all do from time to time. Still, through that, the Lord has blessed this to where she has, it'll eventually save Ruth. That she'll know that her God will be her God. Their God will be her God. Okay, 17. I'll pick back up on 17. Where thou diest will I die, there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death but part thee and me. What a statement. How many people nowadays would do that? How many people would leave their mother, father, brothers, sisters, friends, and whatever, and go to something completely different than what they believe, something completely different than the way they were raised? We've already found out from Moab how they come to be. So they're not what I would call godly people. They worship, I forget the gods that they worship. There's a couple of gods that they worship, and that's the reason why they asked Balaam to prophesy against them. But what a statement. What a statement from Ruth. And what a testimony for Naomi. What she had done in this young woman's life. There was no hope for her. I mean, she may have been provided for, but she was going back without having anything. I'm sure they didn't leave with a lot of money. They were probably leaving just enough to get there. I'm reading into that. I may be wrong on that, but I don't see it like she has a whole lot of money. So verse 18, when she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So she didn't talk to her after that. Okay, we'll go. Get in the car, let's go. You're doing your kids. Just get in the car, let's go. I think that's the way Ruth was doing her. Okay, or Naomi, you're not going to do what I tell you to do. Just get in the car, let's go. We're going to go. So they went until they came to Bethlehem. Well, I'm just about done. We're going to get out early. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was moved about them, and they said, Is this Naomi? She was well known around her kinfolk. She came back. And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. She's acknowledged that at least the Lord has dealt bitterly with her. It doesn't say why, but she does acknowledge it. She's acknowledged that the Lord, the things have been not going the way that she hoped they would have. So she has acknowledged that. Excuse me. Man, I thought I covered that. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. So what do we know about that? How can we apply that today? We get to think, sometimes we think we're always doing what God wants us to do. We go fishing. We think we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. We don't always confer to God which direction we want to go. And then sometimes when times get rough, instead of sticking it out, we bolt. For whatever reason, sometimes it's God directing us. This is what we need to do. I'm not in the right place, and we know that and we acknowledge that. But sometimes we just act instinctively. And in doing that, we're outside of the will of God. Even though we're outside of the will of God, sometimes God's providential is there, and there's a reason for it. And this, God has moved Elimelech to Moabite, and they find Ruth, and they bring Ruth back. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have happened. At least it wouldn't have happened that way. God's sovereignty is going to come to pass no matter what we do, or no matter what we say. We cannot stop God's sovereignty. And God uses us, sinners, to fulfill His plans and His purposes. So we can find joy in that, knowing that we do our best, and sometimes we're fishing in the right pond, and sometimes we're fishing in the wrong one. But God's will be done. And it's quite a testimony that we find out that even though that she's doing things wrong, Naomi and them did, that her testimony herself has brought a believer back. And we'll find out in other chapters how that transposed and how important that is. And we'll get to one of my favorite characters in the story, what I've told you before, is Boaz. He's a kingship redeemer. He's a Christ-like figure in this, figurative. And his mother was Rahab, or in the lineage with that. So he has a special heart for someone who is not an Israelite, I believe. He looks at the heart of an individual. He doesn't look at their status. And sometimes, how does that apply to us and things like that is, sometimes we're only looking for the good. We're only looking for the people who's going to lift up the church and make the church better. And we see other people's like, I hope they don't come to my church. I don't want them to be part of my church. I don't want them in my Sunday school class. I don't want them to be my next door neighbor. That's the wrong idea. With God, sometimes God brings people in our lives for a reason. And that reason may be to restore them, restore their soul. You are their testimony of what Christ has done in your life. Naomi could have been a very bitter woman. She could have blamed God. She could have got very upset with God. She could have renounced God. How could there be a God? How could God do this to me? I left with a husband and 2 sons, and I come back with none. That is grounds for bitterness. That's ground for anger. That's all kinds of grounds for things. A lot of people that you've met, backslidden Christians, why don't you go to church? Well, look what God did to me. The church did this to me. I can't believe they hurt my feelings, you know. Sometimes we just leave for whatever reasons, but you'll see this illustrated when you go out and share with people or talk to people, why aren't you coming to church? You'll see a lot of this in there. But with Naomi, she talked about the Lord has done bitterness towards her. She's acknowledged that the Lord is dealing with her, but she doesn't renounce God. And I think that's the key there. There's nothing that says we're not going to suffer. There's nothing that says that bad things are not going to happen. And it doesn't say that we're not allowed to grieve. We're not allowed to say, I'm bitter. God has been bitter towards me. God has not blessed me in the way I thought He would, or the way I hoped He would. That doesn't mean we can't say that. But it doesn't run our testimony either if we have a good, solid foundation. And Naomi obviously did. So, with that being said, yes, we're going to be out early. And the next time that I stand up here will be in chapter 2. We'll get more into it. And we'll go from there. Let me close in prayer. Pastor Jordan can come up and correct me in anything that I've done wrong on this one.